Hey there, hey, it is Michelle with Brilliant Quest, and oh, we got something good for you today. We're going to be talking about how you mistake important things that keep you stuck, stymied, upset, weary, and just all around a big old case of apathy and blah. And what we're going to be talking about is how people mistake, discipline for motivation and why it matters. All right, so Dr. Julie Gurner, Gurner, and she's an executive performance coach. And so she works with high level executives in the business world. But she has an interesting take that once I started considering it and using it and applying it to my life, it just was like, oh, this makes so much sense. And so I'm going to give you the main point of what she said, and then we're going to expound on these points so that you can make it highly useful for yourself. All right. So what she said is that discipline is a push. It requires a lot of it, and it should not be something that you use all the time. It is an occasional or even temporary occurrence, and it is not to be confused with motivation. She said, whereas motivation is a pull, and it is that internal drive that keeps you going. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about discipline, and then we're going to talk a little bit about motivation, and then I'm going to give you some practicals for you to be able to start the process of unraveling and getting a proper priority of when you should use discipline and when you shouldn't. Okay. So discipline. And like I said, this was a revelation to me because I was always led to believe that self-discipline is something that must be turned on all the time. And it was wearing me down. Okay. All right. So a few things about discipline. Now, these are my expanded notes on what Dr. Gurner said about discipline being a push and motivation being a pull. All right. Now, let me say this before, and that's not in my notes, but this resonated with me so much because in my life as a MBA, financial and marketing, learning marketing, I was taught about push and pull marketing. And so I was already primed, if you will, for this analogy to make sense to me. And that's because in push marketing takes a lot of energy, because think of it as pushing an agenda on you. And because something is pushing an agenda on you, it has to do it often before it to become familiar, because only the familiar will become memorable, and only memorable will become marketable. And that's why, if, for instance, and this is just a little freebie side note, if you're ever trying to sell anything where you're trying to sell in person or online, what you first and foremost must do, you must do branding. Branding lives in the push marketing sector, where it takes a lot of and getting it out there so that you become familiarized with the brand, with the person, with the logo, with all of those things, so that when you see it, it has become part of your references in your brain that, oh, okay, I've seen this before. And the more you see it, the more credibility it has. Doesn't that sound like a lot of efforting? That's because it is. Whereas pull marketing is about you pulling the people who know, like, and trust you in closer. Because one thing, if you've done it right, if you've done your push marketing right, you'll start to get people who are warming up to you and all this kind of stuff. And the thing about pulling people in is that it is ever perpetuating. And it's ever perpetuating because there is a certain amount of word of mouth that helps you. And it becomes where you create ambassadors, if you will, to help you out. Now, the thing about motivation, it's the same. The more you pull the internal components of motivation in, they in turn give you sustainability and keep you going. All right. So discipline is a horrible strategy, but it is a wonderful tactic. Now, a strategy is an overall plan. It is an overall way to get something done. Think of it as the project. Tactics are the components of the project. So tactics can be methods. There are many methods for dieting, but to lose weight is the strategy. So like I said, if one doesn't work, you could choose another one. But too many times we think that self-discipline is the strategy when it is not. It is a tactic that is to be used as strategic points in the process. Motivation is a strategy. And like I said, I was like, how do I rehab my mind to take what I know and move forward? I mentioned many times about my 7-year odyssey, and it's odd that it was not odd, it's symbolic that it took me 7 years to go through menopause, the change and everything, and having to relearn how to focus, how to remember, how to not be a hormonal mess, it came down to me burning out on trying to be self-disciplined, adding that on top of all the stuff I was dealing with. And instead learning that, no, you got this out of order. That's why I'm really big on order. And the order was, you must be motivated. And then you'll know when to use discipline. All right. So also, here's something about discipline that was a revelation for me. And that is that discipline is best used when it is a temporary push to restart yourself, keep going, or finish. It is wonderful when you are trying to up your game, and it serves kind of like as an initializer. And it breaks the inertia of where you were before. So if you're on a spinning wheel going nowhere and you're going to continue to go nowhere, self-discipline is the tactic you want to use to push yourself into a direction so that you can do that. But discipline is not, and this was a big one for me, guys. So listen, discipline is not the engine. It is a catalyst. It is a spark, but it is not the engine. Instead, discipline is there for a strategic point that you want to use to change the course, the trajectory, to increase, to get the boost, if you will, to another level. Think of discipline. If you're thinking about a rocket, and you know they have the rocket at the top, and then they have the boosters, and they have the thrust. Okay. Think of discipline as the thrust to break through the gravitational pull. Motivation is going to be the next component of the boosters that continue to push what you're trying to do up until where it gains its momentum. And then motivation is also going to be there to sustain and keep fueling the project. Okay. Like I said, this might not sound like much, but when you actually intentionally start doing it, it's kind of like the scales fall from your eyes, and you can see where you were efforting and why you can't seem to get past something, because you're using discipline too long in the wrong situations and applications, and you are maybe neglecting or not shoring up your internal motivation. Okay. And this is something about discipline, self-discipline. When you do it too long, you know you're doing it too long, because now it's a slog. Now it's hard. Now you have to use more willpower to make yourself do something. You're uninspired. You're not passionate, if you will, about doing it. That's when you've used discipline too long. And now you need to engage motivation. So motivation pulls you to the task with a passion, ease, and you don't feel like you're slogging through. Internal motivation is the driven focus that gives you the ability to continue to go on when discipline has long detached from the rocket. And then motivation is where obsession lives. Motivation is where flow lives. Now, if you've looked at any of the videos that I've talked about motivation, you'll see that I talk about external and internal motivation. And one of the things I want to say at this point is I'm not poo-pooing on external motivation. I'm simply saying, now that you've listened to this, that a lot of times people are using self-discipline as external motivation. Discipline is where you're going to find the grind culture. Just grind it out, just by sheer force of will, just keep going. But it's not sustainable. Just like a diet is not sustainable. Instead of dieting, you need to have an eating plan. And so discipline becomes part of the eating plan, but it is not the eating plan. Another thing is that when you are working on achieving something, you must make sure that the strongest thing you have is that internal drive. And I used to think that drive lived in discipline. And I had to learn that discipline is not necessarily drive as much as it's thrust, as much as it is a big exertion of energy. Drive is a continual thing that lives in motivation. And so it's important for you to make sure you understand the two different types of motivation, where you have the external motivation that is fixated on a point. And to me, as through experience, observation, educating myself, and trying to gain more experience, I have found that external motivation pairs extremely well with self-discipline. And just like self-discipline, external motivation has a finish point. And that finish point is when you achieve the goal. I remember when When I was trying to raise monies, when I was younger, and I would work, and I would keep that vision, that goal that I needed this amount of money to do this project or that project. And I would just work and hit it hard and everything. And once I would hit the goal, guess what happened? I lost both the discipline and the motivation. I started, taking it easy. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Why do I keep doing this? And it would be many years until I realized that I was mistaking discipline for motivation. And I was only using external motivation. It's kind of like getting the mule to move when you put the carrot in front of their face. What happens when you take the carrot away? Or what happens when you finally feed them the carrot? They're going to stop. And so we're no different. It doesn't mean that that was something bad. Actually, I think it was working the way it's supposed to. That it gives you that forward thrust to break through that gravitational pull. But then that's where internal motivation kicks in. And internal motivation, and this is one of the things that I knew, but it had to take on a new revelation. And that was that no one can motivate you. Motivation is internal. Even external motivation where you're trying to go for stuff, it's still internal. People can inspire you. You can have quote unquote mentors that are doing things that you want to do and get inspired, but they can't motivate you. They can't go inside of you and turn on a switch to get you to employ your passion and your drive. They can't. That's up to you. And so with that, I started having to learn that internal motivation is the first layer. It's the low-hanging fruit. It is easy for someone to say, I want to make $1 million. And then they go and get into their hustle mode. It is funny that there are always going to be different sides to something, some good, some bad, some nil. And the hustle mode is good, I think. The side hustle is good, I think. But there comes a time when the hustle mode must change over to the real mode, to the sustainable mode. It should not be a hustle all the time. If it stays a hustle, you're going to burn out. It's not going to work. You're going to end up having many hustles. And so this is a way to make the transition from the initial thrust that you need to finish, break the inertia of a direction you don't want to go into, or even break being stagnant. But it's not the way it should be for the long term. Now, I think you've gotten that. And here's another thing about motivation. Remember I said motivation is internal, only you can do motivation? With that understanding, motivation cannot be taught. I wish it could. Now, what I can do is what I am doing, and that is I can describe what it looks like for you. I can give you how it behaves. Hopefully I'm doing those types of things. But what I cannot do is, and what I don't think anyone can do, no one can give you an injection of motivation. You can get an injection of inspiration. I remember when Beyonce did her Coachella, I really wasn't a Beyonce person. I wasn't. I knew her songs, but I wasn't, I'm still not in the whole Bayhive, but I was intensely inspired by her when she did the Coachella and she showed what it looked like to pull it off, right? And at that time, I got externally motivated to fight, to not give up, to continue moving forward into the unknown, scared as I was. And I thank Beyonce for that. But she did not motivate me. She inspired me. And another thing about inspiration, you have to renew it all the time. If you are living off of inspiration, you got to watch it. You got to interact with it all the time. But what you can do is, if you don't want to just constantly have to get it from outside, it's like you're trying to use external energy to heat your inside. You can use it just like discipline. You can use it as a spark. Once it sparks, then you quickly move over to motivation. Now, here's the thing about motivation. Some people say motivation is just an inherent gift you have. And yeah, I believe that, but I also believe that it can be built and cultivated. Because if it wouldn't, how can you take a person who has been a never-do-well and then over the course of time and education, learning and experience, they become a juggernaut when it comes to strength, perseverance. And so I believe everybody has a seed. Some people's seeds are larger, and some people even have saplings or trees when it comes to motivation. But everybody has the ability to work on it. And so because of that, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you are cultivating motivation, especially the internal. Now, I've talked about Mihai's book called Flow, where he studied people who were in this flow where they could do hard things for a long time. And he noted things about them. And so we have these five that we talk about. And those are, you have curiosity, you have purpose, mastery, autonomy, and passion. And so these are the things of motivation that keep people going, that keep them passionate, that keep them engaged, that keep them pulling things to them instead of having to push themselves to things, that keep them able to see what's in the space of the unknown, so that they can chip away at it and get to what it is that they really are wanting. It's the ability to do things scared. It's all of those things. And so by working with intention on making sure that you bone up, you build up, and you cultivate your curiosity, you cultivate your purpose, you cultivate your mastery, you cultivate your ability to own it and do it on your own, and you cultivate your passion, that is going to make things so much more clearer to you. As for when you need a little extra boost to get focused, there's, I think, some new terms, if you will, for discipline. That is, quote unquote, monk mode. If you hear people say going into monk mode, what they're saying is I'm going into self-discipline. I'm going into a period where I am going to put on all the thrusters. I am going to turn it up to Mach 10, if you will, and we're going to zoom, because that's the catalyst I need to get where I'm going, to get started, to keep going, to finish, to get to the next level, all of those things. And so it becomes a better tool for you to use discipline. Come on, let's think about it. When somebody tells you that self-discipline is a temporary measure, doesn't that give you some relief? It's kind of like your psyche knows that discipline is not supposed to be what you do all day, every day, because it is hard. It is grit. Now, they have said that grit, that hustle, that drive, that thrust does lead to happiness. But think about this. Motivation leads to joy. And you might be saying that's semantics. Not really. Happiness coming from happenstance, meaning luck or occasional. Happiness is not, just like discipline is not something that is ongoing or guaranteed. You use it strategically, use it like seasoning, use it like salt. Happiness is what you get when you have accomplished that great thing that caused you to have to slog through it and push yourself through it. And so that's why grit and happiness live together. But motivation and joy live together. Joy is a perpetual state of well-being, and it comes through the sustainability of motivation, of staying hungry for it, of staying curious, of staying in lock and step with whatever your purpose is at that time, chasing it down, if you will. It is getting to the level of mastery by being diligent and consistent to become proficient in what you're doing, and then realizing that this is an ongoing quest. That's where the sustainability of this thing comes from. And then passion. The more you do something, the better you get at it, the more you're able to get into a process on a flow, the more your passion grows. And so being able to take those things and employ them is going to be one of the best bangs for the buck that you will get in this life. Stop confusing discipline and all of its trappings with motivation. Discipline lives under motivation. Sustainable motivation is internal, based on curiosity, purpose, mastery, autonomy, and passion. External purpose helps you to boost your discipline for a specific thing. So we're not going to throw out external, but what we will say is internal motivation is the big one. External motivation coupled with discipline helps you to hit milestones, to hit tangible goals, but they bring happiness when you accomplish something. But happiness is not always guaranteed. And so what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have got your motivation and your joy working, because they're sustainable. They keep you passionate. They keep you hungry. They keep you moving forward. They keep you showing up. And I'll just say this. You'll know when you're slipping out of your internal motivation, when what you do becomes laborious, when you're like, oh, I don't want to do it, but I gotta. That's when you're in the realm of discipline. Discipline will help you by doing what you need to push past that rut or keep going. But discipline is always there to help you to get back into motivation. All right. So guess what? Yeah, it is time. I want you to go and watch this next Brilliant Quest video. It's going to help you, and it's going to keep you on the track to developing the mind that you need to create the world you want. And don't forget, like, subscribe, and share. And check the links for any books that I've mentioned, resources. Also, if you would like to do a one-on-one with me, link is in the description. And if you say, hey, Michelle, we really like what you're doing, or I like what you're doing, and you want to contribute to the channel, there are various links in the description for you to do that. And I appreciate you so much, my brilliant bows and beauties. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to watch the next one because it's really going to help you. And I'm going to see you sooner than later. This has been Michelle, your big sis with Brilliant Quest. Mwah. Bye.